Hello, everybody. Today is Wednesday, April 25th, and we bring you episode 92 of Block Digest at block height 519,884. And to begin this episode, I'm sorry, JW, but I'm going to have to ask you to fill out a questionnaire. I'm going to need to know what kind of toothbrush you have. I'm going to need to know what kind of toothpaste you use, how environmentally friendly it is, what kind of chemical contaminants this brings. I'm going to need to make sure that you're brushing your teeth properly. You know, you get the backside of your canines. You know, you get the gum line. It's just in the interest of consumer protection, JW. I'm gonna need to make sure that you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. This is really important stuff.
Oh man,
that's a lot of information there. Jeez, who gives you the right?
I'm sure it's for my own good. I'm sure that if you didn't ask these sort of questions, that I'd end up with tooth decay or something. So,
well, I'm the king of Bitcoin. That's what gives me the authority.
Oh, yeah, the king of Bitcoin. Damn.
Oh yeah, good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's a reference to the Attorney General. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm going to be taking that story, and we're trying something a little different today, everybody. We kind of broke up stories amongst the whole gang and had everybody dive a little in depth into individual things. So you're going to not have to listen to my voice as much this episode, but you're going to have to bear with me for this first part. So I know this is a little old at this point. I'm sure everybody is aware of the Attorney General inquiry into cryptocurrency exchanges. And this is a whole bunch of blah, 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 initiative, consumer protection, blah, 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 blah. So let's dive into the actual things that they're asking for within 2 weeks, deadline out of nowhere. They want information over the ownership and control of exchanges, full legal names, directors and officers, owners of more than 5%. JW, doesn't it sound like this is all kind of, things available in the public record, that they can just look up and not need the exchanges to do a damn thing?
Yeah. But if there's one thing government's good at doing, it's making other people work for them without pay. So it doesn't surprise me that they'd make them put it all together.
Mm-hmm. And then you have basic operations and fees. They're asking for all fiat currencies supported, all virtual currencies supported, all financial instruments. Again, this is all public shit. You click an exchange's website, you look at it, and oh my God, you have your answer. Policies for margin tradings, the fee schedule.
Did we lose you, Shinobi?
I think we lost him.
No audio. All right. So until he gets back, yeah, what's going on is, the AG has sent out these documents to a bunch of exchanges, and they're just a massive list of things that are being asked for. And it does definitely remind you of stuff that you have to fill out when you're a business. Like there's all these crazy forms involved in pretty much anything you want to do. Like I'm sure if you wanted to sell hot dogs in New York, there's probably 30 pages of questionnaire and paperwork. And that nobody actually reads this stuff, right? Like whoever fills this out, a lot of the times it's a big list of crap that's created so that whoever is doing it can make it look like they're being very thorough. And can kind of justify their work week. And so a lot of this stuff is just going to be put together and slapped in a file someplace. Nobody's ever going to look at it unless somebody wants to harass somebody, or they want to think about which kind of regulations they could put in place to cause some outcome.
I don't think the Attorney General liked me in my tone. I think he disapproved.
I was thinking that you started getting into how easy this is to request this information on his part. He just said, all right, let's shut this off.
All right, well, sorry for my piece of shit computer, everybody. I guess I'm going to just dive back in and pretend nothing happened. But yeah, so fees, this is all something publicly available. I would find it a huge shock that there is an exchange out there people trade at who does not disclose their fees for different trades. It's all public information. Describe processes for transferring virtual currency. Okay, now this part, they're asking exchanges to publicly disclose their entire process for managing cryptocurrencies. That is a little bit of an overreach, because you're effectively asking an exchange to document how their entire system works regarding a digital bearer asset that, in most assets cases at least, you cannot just wind back. You cannot do a chargeback. You cannot do a refund. So in this ecosystem where that is pretty much the utmost important thing that a business deals with, they're demanding that they take their entire security system and just lay it out in the open for people to analyze. That's not incredibly irresponsible by any means. Trading policy and procedures, order types, process for matching bids. And yep, this is order types. That's public information. Process for matching bids and orders. I imagine in a number of exchanges cases, that starts moving into the realm of proprietary information. It's their trading engine. It's literally what their business is based around. So again, that's overstepping. Like, what you're pretty much demanding all of these businesses take their trade secrets, which they use to compete against other businesses, and lay it out in the open so their competitors can see all of this. Yeah, that's completely fucking reckless and irresponsible. Detail the policies and procedures for managing bots on the platform. Again, that's public information. If it wasn't public information, then how the hell could people actually hook up their bots? Outages and other suspensions of trading. Describe all policies or procedures for suspending or delaying trading. Again, I imagine that most of this, in most exchanges cases, is public information. Like, what the hell? Like, you pretty much give 2 weeks notice for them to compile public info for you.
But Shinobi, you're kind of assuming that the Attorney General knows how to use computer. So that's that's a bit of an overstretch.
He doesn't know how to internet.
But I mean, and then the next section, internal controls. Explain all protections and restrictions and policies and so forth for employees trading on the platform. Well, again, it's public information. But like, I identify any persons other than employees with access to your order book or other non-public information. Why, like, in what world is an exchange going to be giving access to the core of their business to non-employees? That just seems like a ridiculous statement put there to imply a widespread ecosystem policy of fraud, that all kinds of people external to these businesses have access to private information as far as trades being conducted. It's ridiculous. Privacy and money laundering. Identify all categories of personal information they hold. Describe anti-money laundering policies. Again, this is all public information. Protection against risk to customer funds. Describe precautions they have regarding safeguarding, fiat currencies and virtual currencies they manage. Again, this is going into security. You are asking a business who manages a digital asset that can be stolen like that to lay their entire security setup in the public eye. That's ridiculous. I forgot exactly which section it is in here, but there was actually a demand to identify any instances of delayed fiat withdrawals. And they are asking the exchanges to explain any delays in fiat withdrawals. In an ecosystem where for years, banks have been shutting down people's bank accounts, blocking and delaying wire transfers, credit card processors blocking things and adding all kinds of arbitrary fees on shit, the Attorney General is going to the businesses being extorted and manipulated by these things and asking them for an explanation, it's fucking ridiculous and beyond insulting. Like, hey, hey, Joey fucked you over. Yeah, I demand an explanation for why Joey fucked you over. I don't know. Go ask Joey. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, it's just a lot of information, like we were saying right beforehand, where it just feels like he's testing his regulatory bounds and just sort of seeing, like, if he makes a statement from on high in these legacy markets in New York, the New York Attorney General, who's going to, reply with all this information and just like really do all this, due diligence that, this office is supposed to be doing. Like, I don't know what their funding's for if they're not actually doing the work. But like you're saying, most JWs, most of these offices, they try to cut the fat as much as possible and just straight up ask you for it. And luckily, we got a guy like, Jesse replying out the Real Crypto message there.
Yeah, I think that this is really interesting because it shows like a contrast between all of the centralized exchanges that are just like every business in the United States. The regulators act like they work for them, right? Like, I'm responsible for consumer, as a regulator, like I'm responsible for consumer protection to make sure people get a good service. I need to make sure that the businesses are hiring the right type of people with the right, that fit into the right ethnic categories and the right political categories and the right sexual identification categories, right? Like, I need to make sure that this business is running the way I want this business to run for the good of society, right? So these guys are they're little kingdoms, they're little fiefdoms. And if you've ever run a business, you get requests from these guys and they're not apologetic about it at all, right? Just if you read that document, you get a sense of the tone and the relationship that a business in the United States has with any government retard. It is very subservient, right? It is, you don't want to push these people around, right? Like, if I got this request, if it applied to me, I would fill that thing out and be like, yes, sir, may I have some more? Because otherwise they'll come back and they'll ask for more. And it doesn't cost them anything because they don't work for profit. But every business, every time you have to fill out these forms, and a lot of times these questions are going to have to be answered by senior people. And if you've got a 50-person business, you've got one or two guys that are just absolutely running, totally flat out all the time, 24/7 a day. Their brain is just completely working to keep the business alive. And those are the guys that you're grabbing 2, 3, 4 hours from every single time you ask one of these questions. So you absolutely want to just give these guys what they need and make them go away, 98% of the time anyway. And so it's impressive that Kraken is, it doesn't really apply to them, but so they're in a better position to kind of talk trash to these guys because they don't think that they're going to have to respond. But it is kind of nice to see them throwing a little bit of shade at these jokers. But really, it shows like the value of having a DAO, right? Like I know that the DAO was a disaster, the first one, but if you look at what BISC is doing, the BISC network, there's nobody to send these bullshit requests to, right? Like there's the guys that are most valuable working on BISC are not setting down their keyboards and not focusing on code or trying to help pull a good product together to go fill out forms right now. And this is just one small glimpse into that massive competitive advantage that represents.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, if you look, Kraken actually followed up and posted an official announcement in addition to Jesse's individual statements. And that's actually one of the big points that he makes in this really long letter. He's pretty much discussing I really need to get better at remembering what part of an article a specific statement is in. But he pretty much brings up the point, like, if you think that you can bully businesses in this space around, they're just going to leave or they're going to shut down, and decentralized alternatives are going to pop up. And what do you think you're going to do in that event? How are you going to stop somebody being served remotely from another country or participating in a distributed business? Like, I mean, I know any trader watching is sitting there and the back of their mind is probably just screaming, Kraken sucks, that platform sucks, the engine is a piece of shit, the website sucks. But you know what? Despite all of that, like, hey, what other business in this ecosystem had the balls to actually step up and go, no? I mean, and like, even like, you look at this first breakdown from the announcement, like the 2-week deadline to compile all that is ridiculous, because like, exactly like JW said, that is employees who now have to take time out from doing their job and do this instead. Like, the Kraken is not even operating in New York State. Like, they have provided all of this information in or to the NYDFS in 2014. They provided this information to FinCEN in a 2017 audit. They have this information publicly available on the website. And as I said during or going over the questionnaire itself, some of this is confidential or proprietary information, or information that is directly relevant to the security of consumers' funds on their platform. Like, this is, it's insane. And like, you know, I don't want to just sit here and read this in its entirety for you guys. It'd take like 10 or 15 minutes. But like, everybody should read this. Like, this is a perfect breakdown of how ridiculous this situation is. And we can even look here at what Kraken is kind of putting forward as the priority of traders and their customers. Like, they don't care about most of the questions the AG is asking. They want fast trade execution. They want a good user interface. They want uptime, an exchange that doesn't go down. They want security. They want as little of their private information in a centralized service as possible. And I got to give them a little shit, though. I think customer service should probably be number one, because that is pretty much the single most complained about thing in this ecosystem. But like I don't give a shit about licenses. I don't give a shit about, air quote, market manipulation. Like, what do you mean market manipulation? You mean a market maker executing their trades to attempt to push the market in a specific direction? That's how markets work. Whales bring liquidity and earn money providing that liquidity to the market, trading the spread. That is literally how markets work. And to call that market manipulation is insane. People trade to make money. If you screw up the trade, hey, you made a bad trade. If you do it consistently, you're a bad trader. It's not Papa Government's job to hold your hand and stop you from doing something stupid with your own money. And as a last note, this was actually its own story, but I'm just going to wrap this up in here because this was a big part of this letter. But Kraken actually recently pulled out of Japan. And this is incredibly relevant to the Attorney General and this inquiry right now, because a big part of the reason that they pulled out of Japan was in the wake of the NEM hack, where Japanese authorities started really clamping down on businesses in the ecosystem. Kraken actually had not been granted a license to operate. They'd been given a preliminary or a waiver because they're one of the oldest exchanges operating in the country, but we're still going through the process of being finally approved. And in the wake of this hack, they became heavily scrutinized compared to a lot of other businesses in Japan, and actually had competitors, other Japanese exchanges, approaching Japanese regulatory authorities with complaints about specific tokens they listed in an attempt to kind of create reasons for the FSA to deny Kraken its license. And this is exactly the door that the Attorney General is opening right now in demanding all of this information be compiled and put out publicly. You're pretty much putting each business on the chopping block in front of all of their competitors and giving competitors room to undermine or analyze proprietary information, take trade secrets and use them to their own benefit, find reasons to attempt to draw regulatory scrutiny specifically to competitors and away from themselves. And this is an inevitable thing in an inquiry like this. Like, you're not going to get around this. So point blank, at the end of the day, whatever the Attorney General thinks he's doing to help consumers, all he is doing is wasting time and money of these businesses, causing problems for these businesses. And at the end of the day, potentially compounding these problems to trickle down on the heads of their consumers as all of the fallout from this information being compiled and put out publicly ripples out through the ecosystem. Like, this is just a ridiculous overstep. And quite frankly, it's fucking insulting.
My favorite part of the response here is that they said that they would respond this way to the New York AG or the AG from North Korea.
Wow. Yeah, it's sorry, it's just like I was gonna say, like, kind of go into what you were saying about, like, you know, they're just sort of cutting into the competition about all this, and like they're taking their workers' time, you know, and like I'm just looking at New York and all the recent news about Goldman coming in to the space, and you know, they bought Circle, and then Circle's working with Polo, and I'm just thinking about all these sort of old legacy systems and the business as usual model. And that's the reason I like this response from Jesse, is because it kind of is looking at that model as being outdated and it's not really relevant anymore. And yeah, it really cuts into the competition. And I think it does kind of, I don't know, it should show some of these other big exchanges that are working in the New York area that maybe they might want to start looking outside of New York's, you know, I mean, like, I'm sure they're just playing ball for as long as they can right now. But I mean, like, there's certainly some other places coming up in this global economy that are going to be a better fit for this sort of like legal environment. And yeah, I think we're going to get into that here in a little bit with the story with the Crypto Valley and here at the Rockies.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I mean, final like input for me, I mean, as far as like Kraken as a business, like, this isn't them telling like a government or a legal entity like fuck you in all respects. Like, they're responding to this specific demand, and it's ridiculousness. Like, Kraken was actually instrumental in helping set up the self-regulatory organization JADA in Japan, and working with the Japanese government to establish regulations. Like, they have had numerous interactions with United States governmental organizations. Like, this is a company who has done lots of work proactively in the past to establish sensible regulations. And so that this isn't a company just going, fuck the man. This is a company going to the man and saying, this request you're making right now is fucking insane.
Well, the quote that Jesse Powell gave to CoinDesk was pretty funny. Do you mind if I read it? Because I think that's, I mean, if they're saying fuck you to anyone, it's probably New York. So he says, Kraken's bit license prompted exit from New York in 2015, pays another dividend today. When I saw this 34-point demand with a deadline 2 weeks out, I immediately thought, the audacity of these guys, the entitlement, the disrespect for our business, our time. The resource diversion for this production is massive. This is going to completely blow up our roadmap. Then I realized that we made the wise decision to get the hell out of New York 3 years ago, and that we can dodge this bullet. Ordinarily, we're happy to help the government understand our business. However, this is not the way to go about it. If you want to talk to us, ask us for a phone call, fly yourself out to San Francisco, invite us for lunch at your office. We can tell which industry groups to join. We can tell you which industry groups to join and where to begin your research. But when is it going to be enough for New York? When did all of this, we did all of this once already, and then you gave us the bit license. Why don't you try extracting this information from those businesses actually operating in your state? Kraken left New York because New York is hostile to crypto, and this questionnaire we received today proves that New York is not only hostile to crypto, it is hostile to business. Good luck, New Yorkers.
That's what I'm saying.
Yep.
Dead on point. And I mean, you know, it's like this is just like the starkest example of the divide between regulators and people in this ecosystem. Like, the regulators have no fucking idea what is going on. They have no concept of how this works. Like, they speak in this inquiry about security. I don't think they actually appreciate that whatsoever. Like, these assets, in the case of Bitcoin at least, and some others, that's it. Like, if they move, if they change custody on the blockchain, end of story. You're not getting that back. Like, there is no callback, there is no chargeback, there is no refund feature. That money is gone. And that is now a liability of whatever business to its customers that they have to cover, period. End of story. And like there is just a complete lack of appreciation in handling security for something like that. Maybe it's not the best idea to take your entire security setup in every respect and just make it entirely public. Like obscurity is a huge part of security. And if you take their entire system, their entire procedure, and you lay it out there publicly, hey, you've just given hackers and thieves a manual to go over to try to figure out how to steal shit instead of blindly poking and guessing and trying to figure something out from zero.
Yeah, it seems like New York's got a ways to go still before. I mean, like you're saying, you know, the regulators, and I mean, like you're specifically talking about these New York regulators, right? Because we've seen like from the CFTC and the SEC, like they seem to be at least a little bit more like they're understanding that this is experimental and there's a lot of stuff going on. That's where it also feels like a huge overreach. It's like there's a federal narrative and then all of a sudden this New York, you know, request. It's just, I don't think it really goes in line with what they've been saying at the CFTC.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, it for me, it's like it's like a glimpse into this bigger picture issue, right? So if I apply this to anything that I'm working on right now, like one of the projects I'm working on is this MathBot app, right? And all I want to do is I just want to build an app that helps people learn math and programming and like rewards kids in Bitcoin for passing levels. But I know from experience that if I make this a business, I have a ton of freaking paperwork I have to fill out, right? I have all of these legal liabilities that come into play where if I don't hire the right person, or if somebody just claims I didn't hire them, or I said something mean to them in the right context and they're a protected category, like I don't want to deal with all that crap. I have dealt with it before. And you can do it, right? You can build a successful business in the United States, but it is it's something that you would want to avoid if you could, because there's a lot of stress. And for a lot of software projects or a lot of things people are interested in building, you know, if you're going to build a small business out of passion, like the difference between having to do all that crap and not could be the difference between the business being worth pursuing and not, right? Like if you wanted to be, I don't know, a painter or something, and you want to hire people just to like prep canvases, I don't know. All of the legal liabilities and all the paperwork and the fact that you have to collect their taxes on the government's behalf before the employees get to touch them. And then you know, if this employee ends up not paying his debt, then you become the debt collector because you get a letter in the mail that says now this employee's wages are being garnished. And now it's your responsibility to take the money before the employee gets it and hand it to somebody else. All the ways that like a small business is conscripted, right, is forced under the threat of violence to serve the government. It's a lot. And it's in a lot of cases, it's so much that you don't even want to do the business. So like with MathBot, I don't know if I would do it if it wasn't for the fact that I think I can do it open source. And I think I can do some sort of token goofy thing like Bisq is doing in order to allow people to get rewarded for their work without having to become an agent of the state. Because I really don't want to become an agent of the state in that regard.
Yeah, you know, like you're saying, just pulling back and looking at it bigger picture, and like just sort of seeing the way that the current legacy system operates is like you see a lot of that competition being stifled because of heavy regulation, and also just like if something does pop up that's going to produce competition, you see it bought up. And like we've seen that both things now in the space where it's like you see, you know, startups being purchased from other crypto companies to acquire the talent, and you're seeing this sort of regulatory, you know, barrage to try and keep down that. That's where it's like I don't know, like, you know, I like that statement from Kraken. It's just sort of like steps up to that whole system and says like, look, that's the way it was. It's a different time, and you know, like we were saying, they're testing their regulatory bounds. I mean, Australia is connected to the United States, but is the New York office connected that far down? I don't know. He's testing it.
Oh, it's just like they're fucking up in every way possible. I mean, New York has been one of the biggest financial hubs in the world, and as we see crypto, you know, grow in scope, integrate more and more into the legitimate economy, like if they continue going down this route of like, we are the elite club, like, you know, we decide who comes in this door, everybody's just going to leave. And, you know, the financial sector is one of the biggest parts of the US economy. I can't imagine it's anything short of a huge percentage of the economy in New York in terms of, you know, people it employs, tax revenue it's generating. Like to chase away that business because of this mentality of we are the gatekeepers, we decide who comes in, like it's gonna bite them in the ass. And I mean, if this ecosystem, if this technology really goes where all of us think it is going to go over the next 10 years, this isn't just like a food chain leaving New York. Like this could really damage their economy in a huge, substantial way. And I don't think they really appreciate that. Like when no coiners hear somebody in this space talk about how they think Bitcoin and this technology is going to alter the world, it's just dismissed. It's a pipe dream. It's a fairy tale. Well, one day, if we're right, it's not going to be a fairy tale anymore. And these consequences are going to just come home to roost like that. And they're not going to realize what hit them. And it's not going to be this wealthy class of elites playing gatekeeper that really feel the brunt of that damage. It's going to be the people who count on that economic activity to actually maintain a thriving place where they can live and take care of themselves.
That's it. Cypherpunks, Gulch in cyberspace, baby.
But like I said, though, we are trying a new format. And so from this point on, I hope to contain myself and give you less Shinobi ranting. So I guess, Rick, you want to take us through what's going on in Colorado right now?
Yeah, man, there's been a good bit going on here in Colorado. Like, you know, I've been here for a while now, for almost a couple of years, and I've been going to the meetups and everything, and I've seen it sort of evolve over time. And yeah, this Colorado bill HB 1220 just passed through the House, and it's made its way to the Senate, and it's going through trying to clear up as many regulations as possible when it comes to developing some engineers to get this whole ecosystem going, and making sure that there's not any regulatory hangups, and kind of just making sure that everything's in place to where this ecosystem could be developed, and I guess a proper way, like we're saying, out there in New York and other places, we've seen the regulations just sort of come from these legacy places where they're thinking about redoing it here, and seen a huge Ethereum presence here in the area since I've moved here. And so it's not surprising we're seeing Robinhood doing some open up trading for ETH BTC pairs here in Colorado. And I'm sure, some other pairs will be coming out later as like this legislation gets moving through. And there was an article here published recently where it kind of goes into how the Rocky Mountains and combined with Wyoming and Cheyenne is kind of turning into a crypto valley here in the United States. And I'll just run you through it point by point. It says that, the first point that it's making is, well, like first off, the article is written by someone who's gone to the crypto valley a few times, and they've now gone to Denver a few times in this whole area. And so what they've seen like as similarities in the area is like the first one being like a bunch of crypto blockchain startups around here. And that's true. Like I've run into a lot of, a few guys from the Salt Lending, which people are excited about to hear how I think that whole platform is, you can get loans on your crypto. Like you put that crypto down and then you can get a loan on that. And Key is in the area, and Shapeshift, Cardano, Zcash, which like all these guys that I'm listing off, is kind of it's a lot more on that whole development side without really thinking that much about security and immutability and all that. So I kind of run into bumping heads around here with that, but I think that's gonna eventually solve itself over time. But it talks about how there was a recent ETH Denver, meet it's like a hackathon for 4 days. And I'd heard a lot about that talked about after it happened. And there was some interesting projects being developed there. I'm not, nothing really came out of it to where it's like a solid tech moving forward. But that also talks about the strong education institutions as the second point in the area, which there is a Colorado School of Mines and CU Boulder, which is it's a really prestigious school. I've been over there a few times on campus and talked to the CU Blockchain Club there, and it's interesting to see what they've got going and developing there. And it's definitely another thing where everybody's just moving really fast with the development, and it's hard to really tackle down all the fundamentals for everyone before they just run off and develop stuff. I've seen some things there where it's definitely going in an interesting direction, but it's going to take some guidance. And that's what, all this is, it's HB 1220. And hopefully between Wyoming and Colorado, we'll see that sort of environment develop. The third point is saying that the government is playing ball, which that's correct. Like we're just saying with the HB 1220 that passed here in Colorado's House and it's working its way through the Senate now. And which the only reason I'm not getting too much into details of that is because it's kind of being reworked as it goes through the House and the Senate. But, the Wyoming Blockchain Coalition has recently passed their regulations that sort of cleared up all the financing part of crypto whenever they came up with their definitions of what was an ICO, a utility token, and what's a cryptocurrency, and kind of like got better into the definitions of all that sort of fundamental laying down the work there, where it seems like here in Denver and Colorado, we're kind of just laying down that regulatory framework to clear up all the development. And so, it says that, Colorado has the engineering smarts and, we're getting that regulation through. And it mentions that there's other networks growing similar to this in Illinois and Connecticut. I've heard something about New Hampshire, small town areas that are also getting this kind of development underway. And, it kind of boils it down into this one paragraph pretty well under this point about government playing ball. It says in the Crypto Valley, Zug is the jurisdictional home, but Zurich is where the younger workers live. While those two are only 30 minutes apart, you could see Denver Boulder becoming the place where there are offices of engineers, but Cheyenne, etc., having the legal and financial networks in place. Plus, with access to inexpensive power and space, in Wyoming, it could make it an attractive location for mining and other things in the crypto area. And I think that's right. Just like coming from this area, it feels like that's on point. Like there's not much going on up in Wyoming. There's a lot of space up there, but there at Cheyenne, it's real close to the Front Range here with Denver and everything. And they're putting those regulations in place to kind of spur the development of all this. And so the region is connected. It's like, that's the fourth point, saying that, it's a short flight from Cheyenne to Denver. It's about a 90-minute drive. And, it's about a 30-minute, 40-minute drive from Denver to Boulder. And in between, there's a lot of towns that are also kind of just rightly sized to test this sort of stuff. And so I think they're right about that point, especially the Denver International Airport is here in Denver, which, it connects a lot of different countries. It has a bunch of nonstop global flights. And the fifth point was people like to live here, which I can't argue with that. Whenever I was thinking about moving around from Louisiana and the Gulf, I was looking at what areas of the country are possibly rethinking a way to do things. And Colorado, was one of those areas where I was looking at the Pacific Northwest. It's also South Florida and some other areas. But it was like Colorado just had all that, the mountain, the quality of life, it's just it really is conducive for life here just to get out there and do stuff. And so people like to live here, and the tax burden's lower than Cali and New York, which we're talking about, like, these old legacy systems, like how they could be replaced. And so it says, like, the 6 point, which is kind of just like boiling it all down, that all the pieces of the puzzle are here, compared to the Crypto Valley trips the author's seen. He seems like this place is kind of, just like ready for this sort of thing. And, it says he's exciting to see a new geographic node within the crypto ecosystem sprout and the jobs that are being created along with it, which like really it is exciting to see, like being here on the ground. Like I run a meetup, and like I go to regular other meetups, and I talk to these guys and the way that things are getting developed. And, I'm working on my own thing that I know not everybody agrees with, as far as just like talking to the government and trying to get them to understand what this is and make sure, because like I was saying, here in the Colorado area, there's a lot more focus on development without really getting that much into what we're trying to achieve fundamentally. And so I think, if you're out there and you're thinking about an area to move to and you're a Bitcoiner, man, come to Colorado, because we really need everybody we can get, as far as like, helping people understand what exactly Bitcoin is trying to achieve, because there is a lot of this lack of understanding on those fundamental level, just because, like we're saying, there's a high quality of life here. And, a high quality of life is not always conducive to show why Bitcoin is necessary and why, these sort of things should be developed in a proper manner. And so, if you're from outside the area and you're thinking about getting into Bitcoin and crypto, like I would suggest coming to Colorado, Cheyenne. I've heard, like, I've been working with the government. They've been telling me maybe I should go up to Cheyenne because it's just like, it seems like they're more like based on that fundamental level. But like we're saying, it's all kind of just like a pot that's coming together, and it's definitely looking interesting here on at the Rocky Mountains. I know that I think Janine just visited the Crypto Valley not too long ago. I mean, like I'm sure that, we were talking about how it's just nice in these mountain areas. And, I don't know. To me, when I'm looking at crypto, like we say, and zoom out, big picture, I don't see like it's smart having a bunch of Bitcoin on the coastline. I like the idea of it being like at some mountain stronghold. And I can understand why, like, we might see some of the biggest developments in the space actually kind of work around those areas that are geographically secure too. But yeah,
we
that was
will
that's
build
what's going
the
on in
first
Colorado.
citadel in the mountains. The first Bitcoin citadel will be in the Rocky Mountains.
I've been telling you guys, we need to have the Dragon's Den Valley out here somewhere. I'm trying to get you guys to come out here.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it's like I love seeing like at least some area like this in the U.S. because it just seems like, we've taken not the most extreme like negative attitude when you look at, a country like China, but this country overall has had a pretty backwards attitude towards, Bitcoin and applying these kinds of technologies. And it's just nice to see some region in this country kind of start moving in a more logical direction with this stuff. Because I mean, it's just like the cohesiveness of the federal government over like the past 20 years has just been degrading more and more. And I mean, I think like, politically in the US, like marijuana legalization is probably like the easiest issue to point to show that. Like you pretty much have state governments just kind of giving the middle finger to the federal government. Like, we're going to do this, do something about it. And, I see that attitude forming in the cryptocurrency space too. And it's, as much as I support everybody's right to smoke what they want to smoke, like it's nice to see, that attitude develop regarding something a lot more profoundly substantial in the way it can actually shape society. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Just like the kind of like an awakening out of that, where it's like JW was saying, it's just sort of like business as usual, where if you're going to start up a business, you got to worry about filling out all this paperwork. And then if you start to become successful, you got to worry about a whole nother set of issues. And it's just it's just like you're saying, it's great to see an area of the country that's kind of just like stopping everything and sort of like thinking outside the box, because we have run into a bunch of issues that we have sort of put ourselves in. And it's going to require us getting ourselves out. And it's definitely going to require some people thinking a little bit more about how where we can change the overall system to help this thing function that we call a government here.
Oh no, I sense JW triggered.
Yeah, I know. Right when I said that,
I was swallowing my trigger. I was fighting it and going back to no. Yeah, whatever. Love the government. That's awesome.
No, like okay, a common government.
No, but I do think Colorado is interesting. And when you were kind of going through that story, I kept thinking about marijuana, right? Like that business really needs Bitcoin. And one of the problems with stuff like Wyoming or Colorado passing a law that is favorable to crypto is that if you're a business in Wyoming and you're selling products like online to somebody in Wisconsin, you actually can become subject to the laws of Wisconsin, right? And you have to like block them, and then I don't know. People in Wisconsin are trying to VPN in or something goofy, right? So it's not just as simple as saying, okay, I'm going to set up my business in Wisconsin and be subject to those laws. You actually have to like keep track of laws in every other state, and you're subject to all of them. But with something like marijuana, it's interesting because people fly in, right? Like people physically go to Colorado to buy pot. And so if pot's not legal in, I don't know, Alabama, people can come up there, they can buy their pot. Now, if they leave the state, that's a problem. But as long as they're in the state, they're only subject to the laws of that state, which would work really well for crypto as well, right? So if somebody is up there buying pot and they're using crypto, or everybody that's like, tourist destination using crypto, that all works really well. So so it's definitely positive that there's some competition, even though it's not quite as easy as just setting up a business there and then not having to worry about all the other goofy laws.
Yeah, I can tell you for sure that the cannabis industry is definitely interested in crypto and trying to get around all this crap that they're having to do as far as just cash, and there's some credit unions that they can use for debit, but the fees are outrageous, like $5 transaction fees and stuff like that. It's just it's something where I think if they had crypto, it could definitely make the market a lot easier. And yeah, I mean, like that's something where this industry has boomed here. And so like, when it comes to like what can make it boom more, I imagine setting up this sort of system to where they wouldn't have to, jump through all those hoops would definitely help.
Like that is a huge like thing in states like Colorado as far as like potential for cryptocurrency, because like that's like a huge problem, and like those credit unions that they use now, I'm not so sure that's like even itself a viable long-term solution, because eventually like those credit unions are going to start getting pressured by like banks and other organizations because they're dealing with money that they shouldn't be dealing with from their point of view. And I mean, like businesses who have to deal in cash, like that's a huge threat. Like, everybody knows like these shops, they sit on mountains of cash because they can't put it in a bank. Like they have to go search around specifically for credit unions that will be friendly to them. And that's not a guaranteed long-term solution. And like that puts these people in like a really shit spot. Like, what are you going to do if somebody, comes into your store and rips you off and you have like half of your money just sitting there in cash? Like that's gone. Like, you can't wind that back. And it's like that's like an industry pairing I've been wanting to see for a couple of years now. And it's like, you just need that legal and regulatory clarity to know that like if you start, using something like Bitcoin, you're not going to get even more bullshit thrown at you than just dealing with cash in these like very local financial institutions.
Yeah, it's definitely some local credit unions that are, I've heard spoken of highly with crypto, and they're, like we're saying, there's a lot of push behind this HB 1220, and that blockchain Wyoming blockchain coalition, and it's something where I think we're all kind of moving together, like we're saying, kind of regionally to get this thing developed, and try and do the right thing here, because it seems like Colorado is kind of on point with how cannabis would help people with some medical problems, and kind of help the state with education and all that. So they're doing things. It seems like they're doing things in the right way out here. And as much as I might kind of have hangups with all the development going on without much fundamental research, it's like we're saying, I don't, this innovation, I don't think we should hinder it. So if I'm going to just let them develop, and I'm going to take a look at it. It's definitely awesome out here as far as like being a someone in Bitcoin and in crypto. It seems like there's something to do a lot of the time as far as going out and discuss this stuff. All right. So I think that about covers crypto.
Any thoughts you want us to slide along into your segment?
Sure, I am ready.
All right, starting now. Go.
Yeah, so as you guys probably saw, I think this was last week, Balaji announced on April 16th that Earn.com, formerly 21Co, had been acquired by Coinbase, and that he also would be joining Coinbase as their new CTO. And Brian Armstrong also published a blog post on Medium saying, as CTO of Coinbase, Balaji will serve an important role as the technological evangelist for the company. He will evangelize for both crypto and for Coinbase, educating the world and recruiting crypto-first talent to the company. Crypto first, that's a new phrase. But that's only the first part of the story, because interestingly enough, on April 20th, so 4 days later after this big, I think there was at least one other person who also was hired by Coinbase. 4 days later, WikiLeaks announced that they would be fundraising to countersue the Democratic National Committee, which has accused them of illegally publishing internal campaign documents, which has already been explained in multiple journalist outlets that that's a bogus accusation to make because it really threatens freedom of the press. But weirdly enough, on the same day that they made this announcement that they were fundraising, they had their web shop where they sell WikiLeaks t-shirts and things. They had their Coinbase account closed, and Coinbase claimed that as a money services business, they are quote, obligated to implement regulatory compliance mechanisms, but did not cite any specifics as to what kind of compliance mechanism they were talking about. And so they accused the WikiLeaks shop account of engaging in prohibited use in violation of our terms of service, and we regret to inform you that we can no longer provide you with access to our service. Again, no specifics on how they violated the rules. That was the only notice they were given. I think they were also given the opportunity to, if they had any remaining funds in the account, they could withdraw them, but they had no further access to the service. So because they received no explanation for the shutdown, WikiLeaks announced that they would be calling for a global blockade of Coinbase in the next week because they are an unfit member of the crypto community. And I don't think many people disagree with that. Then on April 23rd, 3 days later, WikiLeaks also updated their primary Bitcoin donation address to a SegWit address. So they had always had that on their website. The specific account that Coinbase shut down was for the WikiLeaks shop, which did merchandise and stuff to raise money. And so yesterday, on April 24th, WikiLeaks said that their shop had moved to Coin Payments, which is based in Canada. And they said, Coinbase has become an unreliable and even dangerous service subject to arbitrary, non-transparent actions as it merged with the U.S. banking sector and started to provide information of its customers to the U.S. government. It has become everything that Bitcoin was designed to stop. So going pretty strong there. And so one thing people might not have thought about, I kind of have a theory as to why these two events with Balaji getting hired by Coinbase only a few days before this happened with WikiLeaks. So as many of you may already know, Balaji is a board member of the Andreessen Horowitz VC firm, which is one of the companies that has been lobbying the SEC as recently as the end of March, at least, to not classify Ether as a security, and also to classify specific ICOs as utility tokens and not securities. So Andreessen Horowitz has also been heavily invested in Coinbase since 2013. And there's a lot of cross hiring between the two companies because I believe another person from Andreessen Horowitz joined Coinbase about, I think it was the end of 2017 or so. And he's now, I can't remember his name. Anyway, a lot of cross hiring between the two. And on April 23rd, so the same day that it was before WikiLeaks said that they had moved their shop to Coin Payments, Coin Center executive director Jerry Brito tweeted an article arguing that Ether is not a security anymore. He said it might have been in the past, but it isn't anymore, and that's apparently a good legal justification. He is a lawyer, so he would probably know more about that than any of us here. But as Alex B points out on Twitter, Balaji is also on the board of directors for Coin Center. Mark Andreessen and Fred Wilson from Union Square Ventures are also on the advisory board for Coin Center. And so it's just weird that that kind of stuff is all, coming out at once. And so as we previously talked about on the show, CEO Brian Armstrong has become a big fan of CryptoKitties and Ether in general. In last year, there's been a lot of Ether activity on Coinbase. And so if they went to lobby the SEC and found that the SEC was pretty determined to classify Ether as a security, what can they then offer in return if they're potentially at risk of, coming down hard on Coinbase for being one of the platforms that was engaged with a security token? Well, why not try to soften their stance by saying, hey, we're willing to kick WikiLeaks off of our platform, especially when they're just starting to fundraise to countersue the Democratic National Committee. So I don't know if that's a big stretch of a theory, but it just all seems to be very convenient timing, especially since a lot of the people involved in Coinbase and other organizations that are doing all this lobbying around Ether, it just all seems to be happening at the same time, and the incentives seem to be aligned, especially since Coinbase has not announced why the shop was shut down, which is very weird. So that's my theory.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. I mean, like the entire move, Andreessen Horowitz directly approached the SEC, pretty much requesting they don't consider Ethereum a security. And I mean, this entire, laid out like that, this entire thing makes perfect sense to me, because all of these big, investors and companies kind of just piled into Ethereum when it became clear that Bitcoin is not just going to bow to them and let itself be changed in whatever way is best suited to these large corporate players. And if after that huge pivot in dumping resources into that, the SEC turns around and declares Ethereum a security, let's be real. Even that happening, it probably wouldn't actually kill Ethereum, as in the network goes down and stops functioning, but it would destroy the price. It would destroy the basis on which all of these ICO and products are being built on top of it to be, sold to just average consumers. It would lock itself away to only accredited investors. These businesses would get destroyed by fines and penalties for engaging in this. And they pretty much get fucked in the ass after dumping resources into trying to pivot to something that they feel they can kind of shape and mold specifically to their business interests instead of building on what's there. And I hadn't even really thought about connecting these two things until you put it together like this, but it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, it's kind of upsetting to see that that's a Coin Center saying, Ether's not a security. I mean, I know those guys are pretty heavy DC lobbyists and everything. And, I don't know. That's one of those things where I feel like if that gets claimed like that, then I don't know. That's just a redefining of what a security is, wouldn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, I like the theory. I mean, it all the incentives would line up, and so I mean, we don't have a lot of direct evidence for it, but it would obviously be in their best interest to do that stuff, and the timing is pretty questionable. And I mean, the irony of possibly WikiLeaks being sold out for CryptoKitties it's perfect. So
yeah, that's
pretty crazy circumstances, but hopefully we will see Coinbase become less and less relevant. I mean, they couldn't have less goodwill in the community before they did that. I mean, gosh, like we've been talking about, like every week we just want to cover the news, but we can't help but cover the fact that Coinbase has done something super asinine. And I don't know if they'll be able to top this one. This is pretty good. I mean, Bitcoin breaking on the scene because WikiLeaks, who was leaking or actually just doing the job of a journalist, right? Reporting on crimes that were committed by criminals within a government, being blockaded without any due process. And then Bitcoin being the thing that was used to break that blockade and fund WikiLeaks, you know, very, very generously, right? With the price rises and everything, like that funding, I'm sure, has gone a long way to change the world that we're living in. So for Coinbase to be the one that blockades them is it's just absolutely perfectly poetic. And I hope that that's the last thing that, you know, I hope that that's seen as like the peak of their influence, right? And from here on out, they're just a sort of despised member of the community. I hate them so much that I've spent hundreds of dollars on outsourcing development work to build this BitSnail project, just so that we can email Bitcoin to like a noob and get them onboarded, because it's one of those small features that Coinbase kind of has that differentiates them. So I'm hoping that the rage is building up in the community enough to where we'll just continually put a little bit of work here and there and make them irrelevant.
Yeah, and I also heard that before I got on the show that the Bitcoin price on Coinbase is like $300 below the other exchanges. Isn't that usually a sign of massive selling?
Yeah. Good.
But I mean, it's just this whole thing is like ridiculously shady. And I mean, Scott Valadez in the channel is saying he can't imagine how ETH doesn't get declared a security. And I mean, like, I'm of the exact same mindset. Like at this point, all of the criteria they've used to declare something a security fit Ethereum. I mean, there's just absolutely no gray area about it. And to turn around, especially after it's publicly come out that Andreessen Horowitz privately approached them to try to convince them to not consider it a security, I mean, there's no way of escaping the political blowback of that. To deem it not a security is effectively to just tell the public, well, all of these things are illegal and we're going to fine them and prosecute people, except this one really big thing that a few of our rich buddies are invested in. That one's cool. And I mean, like, politically, that would be suicide. Like, that's effectively tacitly admitting, like, we're protecting, you know, big money interests that have ties to us, and the rest of you can all go fuck yourself. And I mean, like, I just cannot see them doing that and finding a way to spin that or do damage control on that perception.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I could think of is maybe it's just like that, you know, I don't know, last breath of just sucking up as much value as they can before the system just totally falls apart. I mean, because, yeah, that's something where, you know, you can't really do that. I mean, like, it's kind of like what happened in 08. It's like what I'm thinking. It's like the loans, and then, like, it's like, we'll issue some loans because it's like our boys that are understanding this. I don't know. I just think it's going to lead to a big, that, like, if that happens, then, you know, the idea of, like, this huge crypto bubble burst would be, yeah, it would be a lot bigger than I would expect it to be.
I think they took the Uber approach, the Ethereum guys. They decided they were going to do stuff that they knew was going to be frowned upon by the law and maybe flat out illegal. But if they could get enough support and they could build up enough momentum and a big enough war chest, right? So the pre-sale might look stupid, but I'm guessing that they did the math and thought, well, even though, you know, this puts us in more legal risk, if we can raise at least X number of dollars, we'll have so much more of a war chest to fight legal battles that it's worth it. And they thought that they could exceed that number. So I hope that they just haven't become popular enough. They probably have. So I'm not super confident that they won't get like grandfathered in or something. But yeah, I hope they go down.
Well, on the question of Ethereum being a security, I'm sure that most of the people who have been in Ethereum since the beginning remember all of the legal counsel they were getting about not to say certain things, because then that would like draw the attention of authorities to the fact that it could be a security. Like pretty much every conference they were getting legal counsel saying, do not say this, do not say this, you will get classified as a security. And of course, didn't really have that happen with Bitcoin because there was no pre-sale of Bitcoin. It just kind of grew very organically. There was no, hey, you're my friend. Do you want some Ethereum tokens? This thing is going to launch. None of that was happening. So, yeah, I'm glad that they have at least now admitted that there was that history and there is that potential that Ethereum could have been classified as a security at the beginning. So now apparently the question I would be very surprised if that actually works as a strategy to say that it's not really a security now, but it was in the past, but it's okay because it's not one now. I don't know if that works legally, but let's say it does. That still doesn't really close the question of whether it is one now, because I mean, you could argue that it's a platform for securities. That's a legal quandary in and of itself. So even if the Ethereum token is not a security, it's being used in the promotion of other securities or what could be classified as securities. So I don't know how that's going to work out. I would definitely not at this point say that the case is closed on that question.
Oh man. Yeah, it's something where I don't know. Here recently, I've also seen just like it seems like there's a lot of I don't know, contention there between Vitalik and the community, and at least more building up between it, and it's just like the idea of it. It seems like I've started to hear more and more of like, well, Ethereum is decentralized, and it's like it's not too centralized. It's like, yeah, I don't know about that, but I don't know. It's something that, yeah, I hope that I don't know. I hope it doesn't go in a way where it's like all of a sudden just not a security all of a sudden. That seems like it would be a little crazy.
Yeah, decentralized things generally don't have a foundation that owns all the trademark and IP of something. It's generally not how decentralized things work. As the whole Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin bullshit clearly demonstrates.
Oh man.
Mm-hmm. But I
also,
guess
very, very transparent of Balaji to come back after hiatus, where he never told us what he was doing. Apparently, he was trying to run the FDA, which I guess didn't work out because I don't know some reason. I mean, everyone is. He deleted all of his tweets. What was that, like a year ago, I think? And then he hasn't said anything since. And they came back and he's like, hey, I'll run 21Co. I'll get it. By the way, he published a very interesting Medium post about how 21Co somehow, because it was a mining company, got into $80 million of debt from like leases with data centers and venture capital commitments. And supposedly he got it out of $80 million of debt. That's pretty amazing. So he's been a very busy man.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I guess, we're going to have to wait and see how it goes. But personally, I just don't see them getting a free pass without a shit ton of political blowback for it. Like, I just don't see it happening.
I wish I had a crystal ball on that one.
Mm-hmm. But I guess just one last little quick piece before we move on to JW's story. One last thing I think that makes the whole WikiLeaks being kicked off of Coinbase just even more shady and inexplicable is Cheap Air is a place to buy airline tickets online that accepted Bitcoin, and they actually used Coinbase as a merchant processor. And they actually received a few weeks head notice that Coinbase is going to stop handling the custodial aspect of their merchant processing business. So they're no longer going to be facilitating, handling funds custodially and cashing out to fiat. And so they pretty much have been looking at BitPay as a potential alternative. And I highly recommend anybody who might or has used them in the past to contact them and advise them that that would be a very poor decision as far as just BitPay as a company. Like, like them trying to push BIP 70 is effectively them just trying to strong arm the entire ecosystem into supporting whatever they say in terms of wallet standards and how they facilitate processing transactions. And I mean, I know a lot of people out there probably don't think it's that big of a deal. Oh my God, what are people complaining about? But BIP 70, it makes it easier to tag coins to people. And it introduces a lot of security vulnerabilities because it requires support of different cryptographic libraries used for a lot of pretty broken shit on the internet. And like, it's just like, it is not a good precedent to set to let a business like this, who has a long history of being a malicious actor in this space, just strong arm developers into supporting whatever they decide to push as a merchant processor. And so you can see their actual blog post on this matter. And again, I would highly recommend reaching out to them and giving them your 2 cents on why you think using BitPay would be a detrimental thing for them in the long term. But I guess to slide along to JW's story, this is a sad one.
Yeah, this is a real bummer because anytime somebody asks me how should I buy Bitcoin, for the last 6 months, I've said go to localbitcoins.com, find somebody that's selling for cash by mail, throw $600 in an envelope, even though it feels really weird, and you'll have Bitcoin that is far more private than any bullshit Monero or Zcash. And unfortunately, you can't do that anymore because the sellers are now being required to do KYC, which probably means that they're going to be keeping track of everybody that they sell to, or at least it's certainly a risk for them. So if you're a seller and you want to sell, I don't know, $5,000 worth of Bitcoin on local Bitcoins to a few different people, if you have to KYC yourself, there's going to be a lot of pressure to keep track of the people that you've done business with. If you as a buyer can still pull off your buy, like if you want to buy $150 of Bitcoin and you can find somebody that has 1,000+ trades and has a high rating and has a reasonable price to sell you those Bitcoins through the mail, it's still a good idea to do that. Like, take advantage now. This might be the last opportunity for a while. And the reason is that if you provide false information, if you don't put a return address, right, and sign up with an anonymous account when you sign up on local Bitcoins, if you can make it through that flow, you should do that. Now, the downside from the buyer's perspective is that there's going to be a lot less sellers that are willing to do that, I think, over time. And the other big problem, from what I understand, is that if you reach a certain amount of buy on an account, then you have to KYC yourself too. And I don't know what that threshold is. My guess is that it's probably something that they haven't published, but there's no cost to create an account. So if you want to buy, $500 worth of Bitcoin and the limit is, $300, then just create 2 different accounts and buy a little bit of Bitcoin through the mail. And the reason that this is important is not that you're planning on, buying crack or something. It's because if you have your name and address associated with a Bitcoin purchase in a database that's being run by dumbasses like the guys that are running Coinbase, you can be sure that information, it's not just going to get in the hands of whatever government that you're in, right? If you're in the United States, you're probably not too worried about the US government knowing that you bought some Bitcoin right now. But what you should be worried about is all of the other criminals that are going to get a hold of that data when it's published, right? Like Equifax just published all the credit information on basically every US citizen, like everything that I've ever bought, everything that I've ever gotten a loan for, what my credit score is, employment, all kinds of really sensitive stuff was in that Equifax breach. But fortunately, what wasn't in the Equifax breach is any Bitcoin purchases that I've made. And you don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be one of the guys that are, on the list of people that bought Bitcoin early on. And this is still early on, right? Like $100 might not seem like a lot right now. But if Bitcoin is successful in being adopted as global money, it's going to go up at least 1,000 times, and maybe $100,000 worth of Bitcoin is worth putting a gun to your back. So that's the thing that I think people should be paranoid about when they're engaging in KYC on exchanges. Is imagine that it works out, right? Imagine you take this crazy investment of electronic cash that may or may not work, and you set it aside, and it actually freaking works, and now it's worth a bunch of money. And every criminal in the world knows that you bought at some point in history $100,000 worth of Bitcoin, right? Not at the time, but at current value. That's not a future that you want to be living in. So yeah, it sounds like maybe the window of opportunity is closing on local Bitcoins. It's pretty tragic. But if anybody does go through that process, I've already bought a little bit of Bitcoin, not a ton, but I went through that process, right? Like I know what it's like to put $600 in the envelope and feel how weird it is and how shady it feels. But I'm also aware of the future and not wanting to have my privacy totally just compromised, right? So for the same reason, I wouldn't like publish my bank account, right? I don't want to have that published. So yeah, if anybody goes through that process, let me know how it goes. If you're able to get $100 or $200 buy without having to give all of your private information to a thoroughly untrustworthy source, that's awesome. But if not, let me know, because I'd like to kind of keep tabs on this. So yeah, pretty much bummer, but you know, there'll be alternatives, and Bisq Network is the big one that I'm excited about right now, and it's a decentralized exchange. They don't have cash by mail yet, but it's something that they would like to have. So if you're a developer and you care about this space, that would be an awesome thing to contribute to if you could help them enable that. But you can, you know, there's a bunch of other payment methods, and you only have to share your information with one other person, and it's probably not going in a big ass honeypot of data like Coinbase, right? If you have to share your name and your payment information with one random dude, that might not feel great, but it is actually far better than sharing all that information with the 400,000 random dudes that are going to download that database leak that's inevitable.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you know, like I've kind of said this a few times and hinted at this a few times, but in light of this announcement, like I'm just going to bluntly say it. Like if you're going to use local Bitcoins, don't get an account. Like look for sellers. A lot of them have email addresses. They have phone numbers. They have messaging apps. Just go out of band. Like find them, contact them, ask them if you can buy Bitcoin. Like I have used local Bitcoins to acquire like maybe half of my coins. I have never once registered an account. Just contact them. And for people who might be a seller on there or no sellers, like start thinking long term. Like people should be taking a Bitcoin public key and posting it on their profile. They should establish some kind of cryptographic means by which to prove themselves to be that person outside of that platform. Like start thinking about how do you port your reputation as a seller outside of local Bitcoins. And if you're going to continue using it, just don't actually register. Go out of band, contact a seller, and try to do it that way. Like for a long time now, like some sellers have requested ID when you make a purchase off of them, but a lot of them don't. Find them, go out of band. And I mean, like try to like hack around this as long as you can. But I mean, I think we're at the point like this is probably going to keep rolling in a direction people don't want it to. And I mean, like after the BTC bust last year, like I was pretty shocked that local Bitcoin wasn't hit first. And I feel like that's probably for everything or for all the reasons I just listed right now. Like you can go around it. Like people can take those reputations and port them elsewhere. Like that platform at the end of the day is just a website people post stuff on. Like you can post stuff on a website anywhere. So like start thinking long term, how do we move forward from here? And if you don't want to continue using it, there's Bisq, there's HODL, there's Wall of Coins. Actually, I think they might have started moving in kind of a similar direction to local Bitcoins, but there are other places out there that offer a similar service. Like, do not just cave and destroy your privacy because of wanting to keep a familiar service in your repertoire of tools. Like, take that seriously.
Yeah, and just like the same route, you know, it's like I've had people come to the Bitcoin meetups where, you know, there's people that are looking to unload some coin and some people looking to buy some coin. And so, you know, you don't even have to find, I mean, like, you just go to the meetups and see who's there and, you know, just ask around, and you could probably get linked up with someone who can, you know, sell you some Bitcoin, and you could do it just in a personal transaction. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, like you're saying, you know, it's like kind of just a platform to get people together, and you know, it's something that I hadn't used because I didn't really put the money in the mail. That thing always kind of like freaked me out a little bit. But I know that like in person at these meetups, I've had several times where it's like, you know, I've got some coin for sale, or I want to buy some coin, and these people get linked up, and I don't know if they did a buy or not later, but I know that they meet up there.
Yeah, that's a good idea. The other thing that I was thinking about is that the local Bitcoins offered sort of an escrow thing. So that was nice, where the seller would have to put their coins in escrow. And so if you I don't know how it would have resolved if you threw it in the mail and they said you didn't throw it in the mail, but there was a little bit of security there. But yeah, I totally think that any seller right now, Shinobi has a great idea, right? Get your public key listed on your profile and see if you can get that to show up in the Internet Archive. And in 2 years, when you're on some other exchange, you'll still be able to point to that credibility and say, you know, I did 3,000 plus exchanges with 5-star ratings on local Bitcoins, and I can prove my identity. So I think that will work, and something like that, you know, is a really good idea, so that you can, like you said, port your reputation to the new platform, whatever it's going to be, that doesn't compromise all the users' privacy.
Yeah, and I also want to point out that as far as I'm aware, definitely in the United States and probably a lot of other countries too, like Europe, it's not against the law. Like if anyone's worried, oh, if I meet up with someone in person, that they could like be like a secret agent, rat on me, or if you're buying Bitcoin, there's not really a lot of risk from you doing that, because in most places it's not illegal to buy Bitcoin. Most of the responsibility, if there is any, is on the seller. And even then, at least in the United States, the general rule is if you're not doing it professionally, like if you're doing it under a certain amount in a certain period of time, then they don't really care. But if you're buying, there's not really a lot of worry about, you know, if they find out who you are or whatever, because it's not illegal in most jurisdictions.
Yeah, the people that have gotten in trouble, if there has been anybody on the buying side, I'm not even sure, but even on the selling side, it's people that are saying like, oh yeah, I'm planning on selling drugs or doing something stupid. So as long as you don't tell the people that you're selling the Bitcoin to that you're planning on using the funds to, like, you know, I don't know, blow up the federal building or something, you should probably be okay.
Yeah. Also, just I always say this: meet in like a credit union or a bank lobby, somewhere where the transaction can happen safely.
Yeah, that's definitely key. Like when you're doing something like that, like you really need to think it through. Like whenever you're meeting some stranger in person, like that's always some degree of risk to your personal safety. Like meet in public, meet somewhere with security cameras, like somewhere where, if need be, there is some kind of documentation of the encounter to point to. And lastly, if somebody tells you they're doing something illegal after you engage in a transaction with them, walk the fuck away. It's a sting operation. It is some jackass working for the government trying to find an excuse to throw somebody in jail over bullshit to meet their quotas. Like, don't do something stupid. Don't sit there and think, oh, well, I won't. No. Walk the fuck away.
Yeah, that's a good call, because it's not just agents out there, it's just people doing stupid things. So yeah, be cautious.
I don't know. So I guess any last thoughts on these before we dive into the unallocated few stories left?
I'm good. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. This is something that I love. Lightning plus NFC. So there is a developer working on the Lightning network who is thinking very long term. And he is actually right now working on integration with a Lightning wallet to utilize a phone's NFC in order to actually negotiate a Lightning payment. And is actually attempting to work this into, I believe, the Bolt 11 Bolt 11 handles the standards for QR codes for payment requests. And like this is the beauty of second layer protocols that I don't think has ever been demonstrated before. And I think Lightning is just going to be the perfect example of. You don't have to ask for permission because you're not changing the base layer. If you want to do something, just do it. Like, get it done. You don't have to alter any protocol aspect of Bitcoin itself. You don't have to attempt to push through some fork. You just build it and throw it out there and people use it or they don't. And I think like this kind of attitude is really going to accelerate the development of things like the Lightning Network a lot faster than we've seen the actual base development of, Bitcoin itself progress in the past. And I mean, it might not seem like that big of a deal, to everybody, but I mean, this is huge. It really is a cumbersome experience to kind of, have to pull out your phone, get the thing, make sure the QR code is focused. No, you just tap your phone on something. And I mean, again, it might seem like a small, insignificant detail, but when you're talking about the user experience of something, I mean, I know it's a line that Bcashers throw out there all the time. It's got to be on chain. It's got to be zero conf because user experience. But it's the more subtle things. It's not pulling out your phone and fumbling with things and trying to get something in focus. You just pull it out, you press a button, and you tap it against something. And I mean, these little things really are that last mile huge difference that, Bob down the street is going to pick this up and go, whoa, I can actually handle this. This doesn't irritate me to interact with. This is a seamless user experience. And frankly, to kind of just nitpick really stupid little fringe cases, I mean, I don't know. It's the little things that are really going to carry this forward. And seeing people out there actually consider this stuff and actually just, I'm just going to do this. I'm not going to sit here and scream on Twitter how this needs to be done. I'm not going to berate other Lightning developers about how the user experience is inferior. No, I'm just going to go build the thing to make it simpler. I'm going to propose it, and it's going to work its way into the spec. Because all of this is happening above the consensus layer. It doesn't require the entire Bitcoin ecosystem to get on board to build it and actually implement it and roll it out. You just build it and it's there.
But Shinobi, I mean, to quote Craig Wright, what is cannot buy.
Oh gosh.
Those brilliant quotes over there. But no, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's exciting to see because, it's NFC. NFC's been around for a while, but this is the sort of thing where it can really start enabling some sort of autonomous marketplace where we're going to start seeing some real efficiencies and people kind of having some fireworks in their head about how this technology can be used. And it's great to see that sort of development happening without any real contention there, because it's just this is the tools that we need. It's we have the tool for this, for this economic settlement. Let's start building the things on top of it to where they're going to allow transactions to happen easier. And I thought this was an interesting development. So kudos to that developer. It's good work.
Mm-hmm. And to kind of expand a little bit beyond just Lightning Network with user experience, I mean, there really are just a lot of fundamental issues like when dealing with transacting directly on the blockchain, that it's like it is a poor user experience and you just cannot get around it on that layer. I mean, like you have people like Rogers screaming about how people need to just be able to pull their phone out and scan the QR code and zero conf is safe. Well, your wallet, it's not magic. When you turn it on, it has a database that maintains your unspent outputs. Every time you turn it on, it has to connect to its server or whichever subset of nodes it's connecting to, and it has to get a balance update, which means whatever it's connecting to has to parse through everything and check everything since the last time it connected and update that balance. And that has to be sent to your phone, and your phone has to recognize it before you can actually go on and use it. And I mean, hey, you've sat at home, watching Netflix for a week. Hey, your phone is going to be sitting there for a few seconds when you pull it out at the store, updating your balance. You can't get around that. Well, that's an issue. And you can't really solve that on the base layer. Like, you have to move layers up. And I mean, to be fair, even Lightning Network, like, you're going to have to maintain that connection and make sure what the state is with your channel peers. Because if something goes wrong and you go to submit, like, let's say a prior state, if something goes wrong with your wallet, you just lost all your money because it's penalized. And I mean, it's these little things with user experience. Like, for those who have heard me rant about like Xiaomi and eCash, like there are a lot of reasons why people like me and Nopara keep ranting about this idea. It's not just the privacy aspect. It's because it actually fills in that last mile gap. Like when you're using eCash notes issued by a Xiaomi server, it's just a key on your phone. That's it. Your phone doesn't have to connect to anything. It doesn't have to go, where's the balance? You just pull it out, you tap it on the thing, and it sends whatever specific keys over, and whoever you just paid redeems it. Like, there is no lag. There is no more time your phone has to sit there and be sent the data before you can transact. It's everything you need is already on your phone. And it's these services that we build on top of the blockchain that are really the only way you're going to be able to solve these little issues that don't really seem like issues to us, because we're here. We're the early people here for very motivated reasons. But when you put that phone in Bob's hand down the block and it sits there for 10 seconds loading while he's waiting at the counter, it's going to irritate the living shit out of him. It's not going to be a pleasant experience. And we need to build on top to solve that, because you just fundamentally can't solve those little issues on the actual base layer.
Yeah, I just want to bring up, that you guys pushed out that Lightning ZK Snacks episode. It goes into pretty good detail about just all the sort of possibilities that Lightning's enabling. And this idea of moving on top, and start developing up there. I mean, that's where I think, we should be going. And I think we will be going. It's just it's going to take a while before people really start to snap to and see it. So I think that we will, though. I mean, once people get this sort of NFC Lightning transactions in their hand, and they got, maybe a CU Boulder store where you go in there and you buy your textbooks and you use that Lightning NFC, and people see oh, wow, this is this is super quick. It's super easy. It's all, the overhead's been cleared up as far as accounting, and it's just, yeah. I mean, I think that's where we're going. So I like seeing these sort of developments. And the Lightning Network ZK Snacks video, check that out if you hadn't seen it.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. I just feel weird going, hey, pay attention to things that I've done on the show.
No, you should definitely watch it. It's only 20 minutes. It gives you a really good overview of what's going on with Lightning, and you can see how elegant everything is. You guys did a good job explaining it, but the design is really elegant and it's really strong. I mean, it's a good security design. I wouldn't recommend you take all of your Bitcoin and throw it into a Lightning channel, but that's not what it's designed for. And it's freaking awesome. And little stuff like this NFC thing, I mean, it's great, but that's the kind of stuff that you can throw on after the fact. And the user experience is already awesome, right? Like there's nothing not to love about Lightning. It's secure, it's fast, it's user friendly. It's just awesome. So don't buy Litecoin. Find a way to invest in the Lightning network, because if we had invested 0.1% into Lightning development that's been invested into Litecoin, we wouldn't have we would have had this stuff like a year ago at least.
I hear from Tiffany Hayden that you can buy Lightning tokens on some exchanges out there.
Oh no. No.
That's awesome.
Yeah, smart person.
Yeah. It's definitely her intellect that has gotten her jobs in this space. But yeah, I guess second to last thing, just a little note for us to rant. I will probably do most of the angry ranting, but here's Eric Voorhees trying to position himself and gaslight history and his involvement in the New York agreement by going, oh, Shapeshift. We were one of the first services to roll out batching, even though developers have been screaming to do that for years. We were one of the earliest SegWit adopters. Well, okay. Why does KeepKey, which Shapeshift bought, still not support SegWit in its native applet? Like, oh, you're going to try and save your business money, utilizing SegWit to cut down on your fees, but you're not going to try and save the actual end users money with your end user product that they use to manage their own funds. I mean, frankly, Voorhees, you're a snaky piece of shit. Like, you constantly rewrite history. You constantly try to portray yourself as somebody you're not. And you're just full of shit. Like, if you actually care about users and not just your own business's bottom line, then get the KeepKey team off their ass and integrate SegWit with the applet so that the users out there who are not technically proficient, who would actually have trouble fumbling through trying to connect it to something like Electrum, can make use of SegWit. Because until that happens, every time you talk about your support of SegWit with Shapeshift, you're full of shit and you're just trying to spin things for your own benefit and PR.
It seems like the PR firm or whatever it is doing the coordination, whether it's just the invisible hand of corruption or not, I don't know. I go back and forth on that. Seems to have decided to change the narrative just in the last few days. In fact, like just this morning, Brian Hoffman of OB1 is saying that he didn't support SegWit 2x. And he's got a huge freaking blog post about how he supported SegWit 2x and was one of the key members of the NYA agreement, and felt like he was in a unique position to really push things forward. So yeah, I'm guessing we're going to see more of that. If people want, go out to the Bitcoin Villains website. If you go to jwweatherman.com, I can't remember I think it's BTC Villains. Anyway, go to jwweatherman.com and click on the Villains wiki and fill out this crap on Eric Voorhees and all these guys that participated, so that we don't forget who the greasy bastards are, in a year or two.
Yeah, I gotta make a comment about, I talked to to KeepKey at this recent CU blockchain event, and I was asking them questions about Bitcoin scaling, and because I know that they were with Shapeshift, and I asked about atomic swaps and what's their business plan moving forward and all this, and they were very open to the idea of moving with the community and not trying to hold back development. That's the way it sounded. They have this wording where it sounded like we want this to grow and we're not going to hold back on developments. And I mean, I was telling them, it's good to hear, because we've seen sort of things with Coinbase where they sort of taken a different approach and their understanding of what things are, and they're going to go that direction. And I don't know, I think with OB1 and Shapeshift and KeepKey and these companies that are well positioned in the space, I feel like they you know, they just like are trying to get as much profit on the way up as possible. Like, I don't think they have any, I think that they understand, like, they've got to do the things that the network needs to scale in order to get there. But I feel like they don't have any hangups about trying to delay that to try and profit on the way there. But, you know, I don't know. It's just like, it's where it's like, you know, here in Colorado, like, you know, when I go to meetups and I'm in these discussions, a lot of times I'm kind of bumping heads with people. It's just because, like, I mean, like, I kind of want us to just scale already. And a lot of it's like, well, you know, we can scale. We're, you know, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, I'm kind of in the environment that I have to kind of play nice. And, you know, I'm going to do that. I want to see like what they're, I want to make sure that, you know, like we're still in the conversations with them to make sure that like things are moving forward. I'd like to talk to them about that. Why is KeepKey not, you know, having SegWit enabled addresses? And since I'm here on the ground, and next time I'm in front of those guys, I'm going to ask them that. And, you know, more people we have on the ground talking to these guys, I think the better. But, you know, definitely, you know, it's one of those things where, yeah, it's like, we remember the past, and like, it's not that hard to look back and say like, okay, these were the people that were holding up the network and all this and, you know, hurting the network. But, yeah, it's like, they're definitely a big part of the ecosystem, and, you know, so I got to play nice about it. So I'm going to do that.
We each walk our own path, but I do not bite my tongue. So is what it is.
I'm showing my face. Come on.
It's all right, Rick. You can quietly update the wiki for Bitcoin villains, and nobody will know.
All right. Yeah, I'll do that.
But I guess I think this is a nice last story to round it off, although there's pretty much no details so far. Let's get a slow clap for yet another Ethereum bug with ERC20 tokens that allows you to overflow and create coins. So Poloniex, as well as OKEX, have suspended deposits of all ERC20 tokens and are reaching out to all of the relevant projects and teams to figure out how to handle this situation. I haven't checked, but I'm assuming at this point that any exchange out there supporting ERC20 tokens has halted deposits, or they are insanely stupid and reckless and are probably about to lose a bunch of money. But yeah, everybody give it up for the smart, sound, and secure world computer that is totally not a security.
Yeah, we really need to stop calling anything on Ethereum smart contracts. It's like, it's an insult to the memory of the people that have been working on that concept of smart contracts for a really long time. And they don't have smart contracts, because smart contracts are things that are trustworthy and irreversible. And, you know, the code is the law, right? And that is definitely couldn't be a worse description. Like, I could throw up a Google spreadsheet right now, guys, and I could start keeping track of your tokens. And I promise you, I would make fewer mistakes, and I would probably get hacked less often than these freaking things on Ethereum. So they're not smart contracts. They are, you know, they're stupid, but they're not smart contracts.
Dumb programs.
This is a great way to say stupid.
Yeah, tard codes.
Oh man. Yeah, it's definitely I don't know, it's something like you're saying, it's developing. It's like we just grabbed these tweets before we went on, but it looks like yeah, there's definitely some vulnerabilities that you know, people are trying to clear up before they allow that trading to continue.
Okay, just one more. Maltard contracts.
I think yeah. What it do you want to go back over what is a maltard again?
Malinvestment by a retard.
Okay. Yeah.
It's the basic unit of account in number 2 coin. It's not the Satoshi. It's the
yeah, that's right. That's where I heard it. That's right. Maltards. Okay. I keep forgetting that number 2, man.
We now have Maltard contracts on number 2 coin. I'm gonna enable that this weekend.
Oh, great.
Oh boy. All right. So Who's got some final thoughts for me to load up? I already got one from Janine.
Yeah, that's not even all of them. I have a bunch, but I think we should talk about the magic tux in the room, because this is like, I did not know any of this history, but apparently what's the name of the service again? Private internet access, I think that's what the name is. It's a VPN. Probably many of you are already familiar with it if you use VPNs, because it's one of the popular ones. Apparently they have a history with Mt. Gox, because Andrew Lee, the co-founder, London Trust Media is the company that works on private internet access in addition to other things. And he's the co-founder, and he ran some of Mt. Gox's US operations, and he's now just hired Mark Karpellis as CTO of private internet access.
Bail, abort, jump ship.
So yeah, there's several. It's just mind blowing. Like, if you scroll up a little, this whole thread, this tweet thread is about when Mark Karpellis was like, hey, maybe I should do an ICO to revive Mt. Gox. We're like, no, don't do that. And that was in November. And so I think he got hired in January by Private Internet Access. And it's like, everyone just, this is one of the worst hires probably happening right now in this space. You do not want this guy to be the CTO of your VPN company. No.
How did this guy ever, I mean, why do people think that he's qualified to be a CTO of anything? Like, his background, it's not like this guy has been running high-tech companies successfully for the last 10 years. Like,
I don't think it's something to do with competence. I think it's just that he's buddy with the co-founder, and he's like, the co-founder even said, I'm willing to give this guy a break and give him a job in his most dire time of need or something.
Yeah, but that's like that's when you he hangs out at your office and you go out to lunch. You don't make him the CTO because he's your buddy. Like, what the hell?
Hold on. You are insulting Mark Karpellis' incompetence? He is the most accomplished PHP developer on the face of the planet. He literally built a multi-million-dollar business using nothing but PHP. You question this man's competence?
Well, to quote someone, there was a security firm that I can't remember the name of them, but they did a report that they did analysis of the Mt. Gox hack and the history and how it was most likely done by the same entity, and it was done multiple times. There was actually more than one hack. And I remember someone commenting I think it was at Breaking Bitcoin, and someone in the audience said that the reason they never used Mt. Gox was because how they indented their CSS. So yeah.
So the joke there is that you could view their source code from your browser, and it was so poorly formatted that it looked like maybe a 4-year-old had written it. So random disorganized nonsense. In case
grab a little bit of that code, a little bit of this code, we're good.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Rick, got your final 2 thoughts loaded up. Go.
Yeah, so tonight I'm going to be in Denver. There's going to be a World Crypto Network panel Q&A there. I'm going to be in the audience asking some questions during some discussion. There should be some interesting people there. Denver, like we were saying earlier, it's a lot of engineering developments going on, so it should be an interesting conversation, talk about HB 1220, all that stuff. And, it's going to be a 3-hour Q&A, so it should be an interesting discussion. And then this weekend, I've got my Bitcoin get-together, which will be at a local brewery, having a couple of beers. And so if you're in the area, stop by that tonight and this weekend. And just wanted to also make a quick comment about the Lightning ZK snacks, and JW put out a new Under the Microscope with Tim May, and that's a really good interview as well. And I know that I said I was going to be doing some new content, but I kind of just started reworking that whole idea as far as the platform and everything. So that's still under works. It's just being reformatted. So keep that up and ear open for that too.
All right, Janine, go. You have way too many thoughts bouncing around in your head.
So this is something I tweeted today just because I feel so vindicated. If you scroll up, I attached this to a thread of corrections that I made to a TechCrunch article last summer. I ended up getting blocked for it, given no credit, which was just hilarious because everyone knew that I was the one making the corrections. And I recently saw that TechCrunch, the same TechCrunch journalist, has written an article about quantum blockchains that work like a time machine. So let's just say I feel vindicated in my choice to correct their terrible article last year. If you scroll down, there's actually another tweet below this because he's apparently gone into the business of doing token sale mailing lists where he asks you for money for his research on the best of breed ICOs. It sounds like a horse sale to me.
Was that an image on his article of Quantum Leap? Did he choose that?
Yeah.
You know, this is Nigerian print stuff. He's trying to filter out anybody with a brain and fleece the fools because you can't accidentally do something that dumb. I don't buy it.
All right, and then go Janine.
So this is kind of a minor thing. Peter Todd pointed out, I think yesterday, no, I think it was a few days ago that that Zcash has removed their investor page. Now, immediately people are like, "Why'd you remove the investor page? That's really sketchy." It turns out, well, the explanation is that apparently the founder's reward has now been distributed. So there's no need to have the faces and names of the people who got that reward. There's no reason to have it on the website anymore because now they got their Zcash, they got their founder's reward. So apparently that's the explanation. But yeah, if you want to see who received the founder's reward, you can just look at the archived copy of the Zcash website and you'll find it there.
Mm-hmm. All right, JW, you got a last thought? Mr. Wookie.
You're still muted, buddy.
Ah, the CIA got JW. Shit. Everybody scatter.
Oh, no.
Hello? Technical issues?
I think somebody came and rang his doorbell or something. I don't know. He's AFK at the moment.
Well, string it along or steal his thunder.
Man,
all right, I'm sorry, JW. I'm gonna have to steal your thunder. Well, I guess apparently MathBot has had its first outside contributor. So, you know, if anybody wants to actually take some time and help iron out the kinks in the code to help the younger generation learn math and programming so they can actually contribute to building real things in the world, you should check out MathBot and actually give it a go. And then I guess this last thought from everybody. We just recently passed 2,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. So I guess we all just wanted to say thank you for watching. I think I can speak for myself at least that I'm glad we're not just sitting here talking to ourselves every day. But thanks for the support, everybody. We appreciate it.
Really appreciate it, guys. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, yeah. So last thing for me, I just want to say thank you to all the people who sent me DMs about cryptic message meant in the last episode of Block Digest. You're very, very, very clever at looking up the Wikipedia page of Helvetica.
Yes. Yeah, they're quicker than we are.
All right, so I guess toodaloo, guys. Hopefully we will see you by next Saturday, but we're still trying to iron out some schedule conflicts. So until next time, adios, guys.
Hey, everyone.
Bye.